Nun Massacre Definitive Edition is a free content update for Nun Massacre that implements 3 additional storylines, new killers, and visual improvements along with performance improvements with an update released on June 2nd for home consoles. With the Definitive Edition being like an anthology with the way it's structured, each level represents someone's story or involvement in what's probably an overarching plot. In every level, however, the object of the gameplay is to solve puzzles in order to unlock the secret endings without getting stabbed by the supernatural being that's trying to kill you. The levels involve using drain cleaner to pull things out of sinks, lighting candles to pull statue heads off of actual crucified bodies, finding codes to combination locks, using a hammer to pry off tacks, putting flesh on a scale to put a gear into a clock, and cutting wires, just to name a few things. You might be thinking to yourself, why would I need a video game to pick up a list of things that belong at Home Depot? I could just do that in real life. Well, skeptical viewer, it isn't like you have an entity that can phase through solid objects trying to stab you to death in Home Depot when all you have is a lighter. Rather, the lights at Home Depot are blaringly bright, and before you leave, the store is urgently trying to sell you sodas and energy drinks. Doesn't sound like a very life-threatening scenario to me, unless you really screw things up in the gardening section. Anyway, puzzle games might seem boring to some people, but the real highlight of the gameplay is trying to not get stabbed while salvaging what's left of your eardrums after the nun jump scares you. This game is so absurdly loud that it might as well be called Eardrum Massacre, because we can guarantee you won't even be able to hear anything if your heart doesn't stop once you get jump scared. And that's another thing. We legitimately thought Power Drill Massacre's scares were the worst in horror game history, but obviously back then we hadn't witnessed some of Puppet Combo's other, more newer work. Once that static comes up on screen, your ass better keep going back the way it came, because once those nuns see you, they'll go full-on Jedi hyperspeed towards you and become an amp channeling someone who sounds like they've been put on an automated phone line. Let's get into the levels. The 3 modes all use the same boarding school map, but with different thematic textures, and feature a killer using the nun's base model, skin and additional sounds, as well as new notes providing lore and hints for their respective campaigns. The first storyline, in and of itself, revolves around a woman named Mrs. McDonald when a letter arrives at her house under very mysterious circumstances, which informs her that her daughter has become ill at her boarding school. As she makes a trip to pick her child up, a storm blows in and the road is blocked. Once she makes it inside the school, she discovers that it's nearly pitch black, with the only light that's in there coming in from windows, and if you're on extreme, there's no light at all. She finds that the entire school is abandoned, and that there's a strange presence in and around the place. Try not to get stabbed to death by someone who seems to be seriously regretting her career choice, as you try to find out just what happened to your daughter. To unlock the factory, the regular Nun Massacre scenario must be completed on any difficulty, however, ending A must be achieved to complete the mode. Remember how we talked about Home Depot earlier? We'll get ready to keep on thinking about them, or at least Lowe's. We don't know, it depends on what you have. Or think about any other department store, because the game is based on Power Drill Massacre, and in it, the player takes control of a camper who narrowly escapes the grasp of a drill-wielding killer and manages to find refuge in a nearby abandoned factory, only to discover that she has just entered the monstrous maniac's primary domain. This might be the prelude to Power Drill Massacre or some sort of sequel, because it involves the driller killer's signature routine of ambushing campers in the middle of the night. However, this could possibly be a different entity, because the killer behaves exactly like a nun. In terms of how precise it is, mapping out the original PDM's map, it does a pretty good job at seeing that the textures in the sugar tunnel and in some of the brick corridors are integrated pretty well into this format. Of course, the map in and of itself is essentially a reskin of the Catholic school, but you'd be wrong if you would have assumed we didn't want some horrifying blend of PDM and Nun Massacre. In terms of jump scares, we absolutely think that this is worse than the original PDM, with the Richter scale shattering screams that come from the new Nun. Don't rely on the people with the Smokey Bear hats. They're probably this creature's entree. Well, we guess this level's premise is pretty funny, but that's about it. To unlock the circus, any previous scenario must be completed without dying, or on extreme mode. Based on evil clowns, we play as a teenage girl who is abducted at a local fair and must find a way out of the funhouse of her deranged carny kidnapper. Player must find Bongo the Clown, Bongo doll and place it near the exit stationed in the area in which ending D takes place to complete the mode. Funhouse aesthetic and some of the most sickening wallpapers galore, this will remind you of a few of the original Oculus horror games that came out earlier last decade. Some of them were kind of campy in the way they tried to use clowns. And for now, what you know is our personal favorite. To unlock the back rooms, all 10 anomalies have to be collected in the previous level. Based on Day 7, which is in turn based on the original Backrooms creepypasta, a man on his way to work no-clips through the pavement and finds himself trapped in the backrooms with a hostile invisible entity. In a slightly cut-off version of Ending A door to the outside must be unlocked to complete the mode. Obviously, we think it's wonderful to see locations like Level 0 of the Backrooms in a puppet combo game because repetitive, monotonous, humdrum environments like these are settings we really do think align perfectly with the corridor-based first-person horror aesthetic Puppet Combo is trying to go for with these games. Since a lot of Backrooms levels are just fairly uniform environments that seem like they're from the 90s, we're pretty sure each and every one of them, besides the ones that aren't too artsy and filled with light, would bode very well with the game if they were made into non-Massacre levels. Obviously, levels like Sublimity and Subwater would feel out of place if they had their own nuns in them, but the Habitable Zone and Electrical Station are places where it does have that really ominous industrial vibe to it. But we're not gonna sit here and act like Puppet Combo is full scanning the wiki every 2 seconds to see what new Gary's mod map they've put on the wiki at this point. We're honestly pretty glad to see a revitalized edition of Nun Massacre come out for even consoles as well, along with additional content that's sure to scare some of the most steel-nerved people out there. And we think steel can conduct electricity, so maybe your nerves can be made out of steel. They won't be flexible, but anyway, because this game's new content has been dormant for a while, it's obviously needed a major up because it's been almost 5 years now since it initially came out, and until now, not much changed since its initial vanilla release. But with this new release, you better pray, because pretty much nothing else can save you from these nuns.